What would you do if someone told you to leave your seat just because of how you look? On an ordinary flight to Savannah, a quiet woman named Eunice Braxton finds herself at the center of a storm she never asked for. But this time, she doesn't walk away. Before we dive in, let us know, what time are you listening to this? And where are you? Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. Evercrest Terminal was humming with the usual low roar of rolling suitcases, coffee orders, and tinny boarding announcements that blurred together like background noise on a worn-out tape. The fluorescent lights overhead made everything look slightly too sharp, like reality turned up a notch too high. Eunice Braxton sat on a stiff plastic bench near Gate 7A. 63 years old, slim, graceful in a quiet way. She wore a gray wool coat buttoned to the top, slacks pressed the night before, and a burgundy scarf wrapped snugly around her neck. Nothing flashy, but there was care in every piece. Like she dressed for someone she respected, even if that someone was just herself. Next to her, tucked carefully under her arm, was a small knitted handbag. It looked handmade, maybe even older than some of the teenagers zipping by with earbuds in and phones glued to their hands. Her other hand rested gently on a manila envelope containing her ticket, a folded-up map, and a letter she hadn't yet opened. The gate agent called out a destination that wasn't hers. Eunice didn't look up. Her eyes were fixed on the runway outside, where planes crawled across the tarmac like slow silver beetles. She was headed to Savannah. Not for vacation. Not for family. For Mildred. Mildred, her best friend from high school, who used to sneak her sugar cookies during homeroom and knew every inch of Eunice's laugh. They hadn't spoken much in the past few years. Life had its way of pulling people apart. But when Eunice got the call that Mildred was in hospice, something in her clicked into place. She had to go. She needed to see her one more time. And maybe, just maybe, say some of the things she'd been carrying for too long. Still, there was a weight in her chest. Not fear, exactly. Not sadness either. Something else. Something like memory. A kind that sat in your bones, no matter how far you walk from it. She'd been 11 when she was told to move to the back of the bus. Didn't matter that the front seats were empty. Didn't matter that her feet ached. That moment stuck with her, not because she fought back, but because she didn't. And here she was, decades later, boarding another kind of vehicle. Different era, same undercurrent. She sighed and reached into her bag for a mint. That's when it started. The scanner at security had beeped in a way that made the young agent frown. He looked at her boarding pass again, then at his screen. "Just a second, ma'am." Eunice smiled, calm. "Of course." A woman approached from a side, tall, slim, late 30s maybe. Neatly pulled back blonde hair, navy blue uniform fitted to precision. Carla Wynnum. The name tag sat perfectly straight on her chest. "Is there a problem here?" Carla asked, her tone not quite rude, but lacking warmth entirely. "She's fine," the agent replied. "Just a glitch in the system." Carla gave Eunice a quick once-over. Her lips tightened, almost imperceptibly. Then she turned to the agent. "Let's make sure next time, all right? We can't have folks boarding the wrong zones." Her voice was dipped in something too familiar to Eunice. Sweet on the surface, sharp underneath. The young agent waved Eunice through. "You're good to go, ma'am." Eunice nodded, her smile still there, but a little thinner. She walked slowly toward Gate 7A again, her shoes clicking softly on the tile floor. As she passed the windowed hall, she heard it, voices low, but not low enough. "That woman back there, did you see that?" Carla said to another flight attendant, chuckling under her breath. "I'll bet she's in the wrong seat. Always happens with folks like that." The other attendant didn't respond, just looked away. Eunice stopped walking, just for a second. Her fingers curled tighter around the handle of her bag. She'd been through worse, much worse. But there was something about hearing it out loud, bold, unashamed, that pierced through her years of practiced silence. She took a breath. Not deep, not dramatic, just enough to push her forward. When she reached her seat at Gate 7A, she sat down slowly, folded her hands, looked straight ahead. She wasn't going to make a scene. She wasn't going to run. But this time, she wasn't going to disappear either. She had somewhere to be, someone waiting. And no one, not this Carla woman, not a system, not a moment of judgment dressed up as protocol, was going to stop her from getting there. Eunice stayed quiet in her seat near gate 7A, her hands folded in her lap like she was holding something delicate. The hum of the terminal faded into a kind of static as she stared out the window. Out there, on the other side of the glass, the planes moved like giant, slow creatures across the tarmac. Unbothered. Untouchable. Inside, though, her mind wasn't still. Not at all. There was something about airports that always brought the past back, like old photographs tucked in drawers you hadn't opened in years. Maybe it was the fluorescent lights, the constant moving, the way people looked through you when they were rushing somewhere else. She thought about the diner back in '83, when she'd waited 15 minutes at the counter while the waitress served folks who came in after her. Or the nurse at the clinic who said, "Insurance doesn't usually cover folks like you," before even checking her paperwork. Or the time she tried to open a savings account and the manager assumed she was there to clean. It wasn't rage she felt. It wasn't even surprise anymore. Just fatigue, like being slowly erased inch by inch. She reached into her bag for a tissue and caught a glimpse of the envelope again. The one Mildred's niece had mailed, with a shaky handwritten note inside. "She's asking for you," it said. That was all. Eunice hadn't heard her son's voice in nearly 4 months. Not really. Thaddeus had called in January, wished her a happy birthday, asked if she needed anything. But there was a kind of distance in his tone, polite, practiced, and always so busy. "He's in aviation," she murmured to herself, as if the thought needed confirming. Up in the clouds, somewhere too high to reach. Her thoughts were interrupted by a gentle voice beside her. "Excuse me, are you okay?" She turned. A young woman, mid to late 20s, warm brown skin, a nose ring, and curly hair tied back into a bun, sat a few seats away, holding a smartphone with a small microphone clipped to it. "I'm fine," Eunice said, giving her a small smile. "Just waiting for my flight." The young woman smiled back. Didn't mean to pry. It just looked like, I don't know, like you were carrying something heavy. Eunice laughed lightly. "At my age, that's usually true." "I'm Maya," the woman said, offering a nod instead of a handshake. "I make content. Social stuff. Stories, mostly. Real ones." Eunice didn't fully understand what that meant, but she nodded politely. From the corner of her eye, Maya noticed movement. Carla again, walking briskly down the terminal with a clipboard in hand, and that same clipped, no-nonsense walk. "Hey," Carla said sharply, stopping in front of Eunice. "Can I see your boarding pass again?" Eunice blinked. Of course. She fished it from her purse and handed it over. Carla gave it a brief glance, then raised an eyebrow. "This seat is Comfort Plus," Carla said, tapping the paper. "Are you sure this is correct?" "I bought the ticket through the website," Eunice replied calmly. "That's the seat I was given." Carla tilted her head slightly. "Sometimes there are errors. You'll need to step over to the desk so we can verify." Eunice opened her mouth, then closed it. She stood slowly, careful not to knock over her bag. As Carla turned to lead her away, Maya quietly tapped her screen. Her phone's camera lit up in record mode. She didn't speak, didn't interfere. But she didn't look away, either. No one else said anything. A man in a business suit glanced up from his laptop, and then went back to typing. A woman scrolled through her phone. Another looked toward the restroom. The silence was so loud it rang in Eunice's ears. At the help desk, a staff member scanned Eunice's ticket again. "You're fine, ma'am. There's nothing wrong here." Carla didn't apologize. She simply turned and walked off. Eunice returned to her seat, a little slower this time. Her cheeks were warm, but her back stayed straight. Maya kept recording. But this time, she stepped away toward a quiet corner near the windows. She pulled up her contacts and messaged someone labeled Derek, Sable Air, PR. A few seconds later, a reply popped up. "Wait, that woman. That's Eunice Braxton." Maya frowned. "You know her?" Another ping. "Yeah. I think she's Thaddeus Braxton's mother." Maya stared at the screen, lips parted. Her mind spun, not out of excitement, but disbelief. What were the odds? She glanced over at Eunice. who had picked up her knitting from the side pocket of her bag and was working quietly, fingers steady. Maya lifted her phone again, not to record, just to look at the last frame she'd captured. Eunice standing, shoulders back, eyes tired but dignified. Something about it struck Maya hard. There was more to this story, and she was going to find it. The cabin of Flight 3742 buzzed with the soft sound of instrumental jazz, the kind meant to calm nerves, but that rarely did. Warm lighting glowed above each seat, casting gentle shadows across rows of passengers settling in with neck pillows, travel mugs, and earbuds already in place. Eunice stepped onto the plane slowly, her carry-on tucked close to her side. Her hands moved with intention. She was careful not to block the aisle, careful not to bump anyone, careful because life had taught her to be. She found her seat, 10A, Comfort Plus, window, and eased her bag into the overhead bin. A gentleman across the aisle offered a polite smile. She nodded back and sat down, letting her fingers rest on her lap. For a moment, she allowed herself a breath. Just one. She was here. She'd made it through security, through the waiting, through Carla. Now, all that was left was the flight. A couple of hours in the air. Savannah. Mildred. Then Carla appeared. She was moving row by row, scanning faces, clutching her clipboard like it held state secrets. When she reached row 10, her expression shifted. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes narrowed, not confused, not curious, just cold. "Excuse me, ma'am," she said, voice a little louder than necessary. "You're in the wrong seat." Eunice looked up slowly. "I don't think so. This is seat 10A. "This is Comfort Plus," Carla replied, tapping the headrest like that proved something. "Please gather your things and step off the plane. We'll sort it out at the gate." Eunice blinked. "My ticket says 10A. I booked it last week. You can scan it again if you'd like." "I said," Carla repeated, louder this time, "you need to exit the aircraft now, or I'll call security." A few heads turned. Someone 2 rows back started recording. The buzz of the music seemed to dull into background tension. Eunice didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She reached slowly into her coat pocket and handed over the ticket. Carla barely glanced at it before snatching it out of her hand. Eunice's heart beat hard in her chest, but her voice remained steady. "There's been a mistake, and it isn't mine." "You're delaying departure," Carla snapped. "I need you off this plane." No one spoke. No one stood. A man across the aisle looked down at his shoes. A young couple further back kept their eyes on their phones. One woman put her earbuds in like she wanted to disappear. "I don't want any trouble," Eunice said, rising from her seat with effort. "So don't bother calling security. I'll go." She reached for her bag in the overhead bin. Her hands didn't shake, but her fingers curled tighter than usual. There was a kind of silence in the cabin, sharp and full, like air just before a storm. As she walked down the narrow aisle, someone behind her whispered, "Isn't she? I swear I've seen her somewhere before." Maya stood near the boarding door, phone clutched tight in her hand. Her camera had captured the whole thing, every word, every gesture, every second of Carla's tone-deaf command. Her breath caught as Eunice stepped off the plane, eyes forward, dignity intact, but body weighed down by the moment. Back inside the terminal, a different agent, nervous, maybe new, approached Eunice quickly, apologizing under his breath and trying to help recheck the seat. His voice stumbled. She didn't scold him, just waited. Across the airport, Maya's phone buzzed. A message lit up her screen. "That woman's name is Eunice Braxton. I'm almost sure of it." It was Derek again, her contact at Sable Air's communications office. Maya typed back fast. "Why does that name sound familiar?" The answer came seconds later. "Because she's the CEO's mother." Maya stared at the screen. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. Then slowly she looked up. Through the glass wall of the terminal, she saw Eunice sitting again at gate 7A. This time, she wasn't knitting. She was just sitting, her back still straight, her eyes steady. Maya didn't hit record again, not yet. Instead, she whispered under her breath, "Oh, Carla, you just made the worst mistake of your life." The conference room at Sable Air headquarters was a glass box, modern, sleek, sterile. Thaddeus Braxton stood at the head of the table, gesturing toward a slideshow projected behind him. He was walking the board through a new loyalty program when his phone buzzed on the table for the third time in under 2 minutes. He tried to ignore it. Not the time. Then his assistant, Kayla, slipped in through the side door with her tablet in hand, and that look on her face, the one that meant something was very wrong. "Sorry, Mr. Braxton," she said softly, sliding the tablet his way. "You need to see this." The video was already playing. There was no music, no editing. Just raw footage. Eunice, his mother, standing in the aisle of a plane. A woman in uniform, sharp voice cutting through the quiet. "You need to exit the aircraft now." His mother didn't yell, didn't argue. She simply nodded and left. Walked off that plane like she'd been told to walk out of places all her life. Thaddeus froze. The room around him blurred. On screen, she looked smaller than he remembered. Frilier maybe. But there was something solid about her still, something that hadn't bent. A caption below the video read, "Gate 7A. Comfort Plus." Or just comfort for some. His chair scraped the floor as he stood. "Reschedule the meeting," he said flatly. "I need a car to the airport now." No one asked why. Across town, Maya sat in the food court, phone shaking slightly in her hand. Her account, one she usually used for test videos and throwaway drafts, had blown up. The clip was spreading faster than she'd imagined. She hadn't named names. She hadn't mentioned the airline or tagged the CEO. But people were watching, commenting, sharing. This woman is somebody's mother. She handled that with more grace than I ever could. Why do people still act like this is normal? Maya took a breath, tapped the post, and typed a single sentence. Who else thinks she deserves to be treated like a person? Then she hit send. Back at Gate 7A, Eunice sat again, this time in the same seat she'd waited in before. Her hands rested on her lap. Her ticket lay on the bench beside her, creased at the edges from being handled too many times in one day. A young man in a navy blazer approached, looking uncomfortable. He wasn't part of the gate crew. His badge read corporate. He crouched slightly, so he wasn't towering over her. "Mrs. Braxton, I'm Terrence. I'm with the executive team at Sable Air. I've been asked to personally apologize and escort you back onto your flight. We've, reopened boarding just for you." Eunice didn't move. "And why is that?" she asked, quiet but clear. Terrence swallowed. "We want to make this right." She glanced around. People were watching. Some pretended not to. One woman smiled at her softly and dipped her head in an apology she didn't voice. Eunice looked back at the young man. "So I'm welcome back, because someone figured out who I am?" He hesitated. "I don't need special treatment," she said. "I never did. I just want what you'd give anyone else who looked different from me." Terrence didn't know what to say, but he nodded anyway. A moment later, another figure appeared in the terminal, taller, broader, dressed down in jeans and a button-up. No suit, no tie, just Thaddeus. His mother didn't stand when she saw him. She didn't need to. He walked over slowly and sat beside her, like he had when he was 10, and scraped his knee on the front step. "I came as fast as I could," he said. She looked him over. "You came looking like a man, not a CEO." "I didn't want to be anything else today," he replied. There was a pause. Then, gently, he reached for her hand. "You didn't have to come here," she said, voice low. "Yes, I did." She looked down at their hands, his large and warm. Hers, knotted with time, but still steady. "I don't need you to fix this," she said. "I just want you to remember what you promised me when you were 16, standing in that church basement talking about starting your own airline." Thaddeus nodded slowly. "That no one would ever feel small flying with us." She nodded back. "Then hold on to that, even when it's hard." He didn't speak again. He just sat with her, quiet, while the terminal swirled around them. Maya stood nearby, watching from behind a potted plant, phone still in hand, but no longer recording. She hadn't expected this part. The stillness of it. The wait. Somewhere, behind all the noise and headlines, something real had shifted. The VIP lounge was too quiet. Even the soft jazz spilling from hidden speakers seemed to tiptoe through the room. Eunice sat near a window, though she wasn't looking out. A porcelain teacup rested in her hand, untouched. The steam had faded, but her grip hadn't loosened. Outside, planes glided across the runway like they had somewhere important to be. Inside, she sat still, like time had folded in on itself and was waiting for her to decide something. A young man in a Navy Sable Air vest approached cautiously. "Ma'am," he said gently, "we've got an open seat for the next flight out. Or we can rebook you for tomorrow if you'd rather." Eunice shook her head before he could finish. Not harshly, just certain. "No. I'm getting on the flight I paid for. Today. Same seat." The young man hesitated, then nodded, stepped back, and left her alone. She finally took a sip of the lukewarm tea. It tasted like it had been sitting too long, just like everything else today. A few minutes later, Maya appeared in the doorway, holding her phone with both hands like it was something sacred. She moved slowly, almost unsure whether she should even be there. "Hi, Mrs. Braxton. I just wanted to bring this to you." Eunice turned, her eyes soft but guarded. Maya sat beside her and tapped the screen. The video started again, Eunice standing on the plane, Carla's voice sharp and pointed, the silence from the other passengers, the steady way Eunice walked off. Maya didn't say a word. She just held it there, letting it play out. When it ended, Eunice didn't speak right away. Her eyes stayed on the screen, even after it went dark. Then, finally, "What do you think they'll see when they watch that?" Maya looked down. I hope they see a woman who's been through enough." And this time, she didn't stay quiet. Eunice let out a long breath. It wasn't quite a sigh, more like something that had been waiting a long time to leave. "I didn't speak up because I wanted attention," she said quietly. "I spoke up because I'm tired of being spoken over." Meanwhile, across town, the Sable Air executive boardroom was a mess of raised voices and frantic tapping on laptops. Screens flashed viral headlines. Emails poured in from partners, passengers, and media outlets. "Damage control," someone said. "Get ahead of it," said another. A woman at the end of the table offered, "We can put out a statement, something neutral. No names. Just say we're reviewing the incident." Someone else nodded. "Yes, and don't mention the mother angle. It's too personal. Might make it worse." That's when Thaddeus, who had been pacing in silence, slammed his palm down on the table. "No," he said. "We are not erasing her again." The room fell silent. He straightened his posture. "You want to know why we're in this mess? It's not because of one flight attendant. It's because people like you keep trying to make women like my mother disappear." No one responded. "I'm not hiding her name. She is Eunice Braxton. She's the reason I started this company. And the reason I won't let it become just another airline full of empty apologies." His voice wasn't loud, but it hit hard. There was no arguing with it. Back at the gate, the new crew had started to reboard passengers. One of the attendants, a young black woman with calm eyes and a quiet presence, approached Eunice. "Mrs. Braxton," she said softly, "we'd like to welcome you back on board. Same seat, of course." Eunice stood. No rush, no hesitation. She smoothed her coat with both hands, picked up her bag, and walked toward the gate like it was the most natural thing in the world. The terminal seemed quieter now. Not out of fear, out of awareness. A few heads turned. One man stood a little taller when she passed. A woman with silver hair nodded in silent respect. Eunice didn't look for attention. She didn't need it. As she stepped onto the plane, the new attendant greeted her at the door with a smile that was genuine. "Welcome aboard, Mrs. Braxton." She returned the smile with a slight nod. "Thank you. Seat 10A. Comfort Plus. Window." She sat down, tucked her bag under the seat in front of her, and folded her hands on her lap. She looked out the window, not at the sky, but at her own reflection in the glass. And she saw herself exactly where she was supposed to be. The press conference wasn't planned. It came together in less than 2 hours, under pressure, under scrutiny, under the weight of a video that had reached 3 million views by lunchtime. But when Thaddeus Braxton walked onto the stage, no one saw a man under siege. They saw a man who had finally decided to stop hiding. He wore no blazer, no tie, just a rolled-up white shirt, sleeves creased to the elbows. There were no polished remarks on the podium. Just him, a single mic, and a room full of waiting faces. He paused for a second. Let the room settle. My name is Thaddeus Braxton, he began. And I'm the CEO of Sable Air. Another pause. His eyes scanned the crowd. Then he took a breath and let go of the sentence he hadn't said publicly in decades. I'm also the son of Eunice Braxton. Some cameras shifted. Some reporters blinked. But he didn't flinch. I didn't grow up with money, he continued. I didn't grow up with connections. I grew up with a mother who worked 2 jobs and still packed my lunch every day. I grew up watching her get passed over, overlooked, disrespected, quietly, politely, publicly. He glanced down at his hands. When I was 10, we were turned away from a cafe. She told me it didn't matter, that we'd just go somewhere else. But I saw the way she held her purse tighter that day. I saw the way her shoulders dropped just a little lower. That story had lived in him for so long, it came out like memory, not performance. She never made a scene. She never raised her voice. But she taught me what dignity looked like, even when it wasn't returned. He looked up again. The room was dead silent. I built this airline because I wanted people like her to feel seen. Not just served, but truly seen. Today, that mission was tested. And I failed. A stir in the room. Yes, he said, raising a hand. I failed. Because it happened under my watch. And no amount of slogans or safety videos can undo what she experienced yesterday. He let that land. Then he continued, voice steady. Starting tomorrow, every employee at Sable Air, executive, flight crew, customer service, will undergo a new kind of training. Not just how to serve, but how to see, how to listen, how to recognize bias, no matter how quiet it sounds. He stepped back from the mic for a beat. Then, we can't change the whole world overnight, but we can change how people are treated at 35,000 feet. And maybe that's a start. Back on the plane, Eunice sat in her seat by the window, hands folded neatly in her lap. The hum of the engines filled the cabin like a low whisper. Her phone buzzed softly. Maya had sent her a message. He did it. Attached was a video clip, Thaddeus at the mic, voice quiet but unshaken. She watched him say her name in front of the world. Watched him speak the truth he used to keep folded up inside himself like a secret. Her eyes glistened. Not with pride, exactly. More like a gentle ache she'd been holding too long. Someone behind her tapped her shoulder. A woman with salt and pepper hair and a lavender cardigan leaned in. I saw the video, the woman said. I just wanted to say thank you for how you handled it. With grace. Eunice nodded, a soft smile touching the edge of her mouth. I was just trying to get to Savannah. The woman smiled back. Well, you've done a little more than that. Eunice looked down at her hands again. Wrinkled, yes. But strong. Steady. She turned to the window as the plane began to taxi. Sunlight slipped across the wing, warm and golden. In that moment, no one asked her to move. No one questioned her presence. No one challenged her seat. There was no confetti, no applause. Just a woman sitting exactly where she was supposed to be, ticket in hand, sky ahead. And her name finally spoken out loud, not as a burden, not as a footnote, but as a truth worth saying. The clouds outside the window looked like waves frozen mid-crash. Eunice leaned slightly forward, her forehead resting near the cool glass. It wasn't the view that held her attention. It was the stillness inside her. Not calm, not relief, but something deeper. Like her spirit had unclenched. A quiet knock at her armrest brought her back. The new flight attendant, young, kind eyes, warm tone, held out a small plastic cup. Sparkling water, she said. With lime. I read somewhere you liked it. Eunice accepted it with a smile. The attendant bent down and whispered gently, on behalf of the crew and everyone else. You being here means more than you know. Thank you for not staying silent. Eunice nodded, not trusting her voice just yet. She took a sip. The bubbles danced on her tongue. The plane hummed steadily, pushing through the sky. No one asked her to move. No one questioned her seat. She was simply there. And that, for once, was everything. Miles away, in a one-bedroom apartment outside Marietta, Carla Wynnum sat on the edge of her couch, remote in one hand, phone face down on the cushion next to her. The television flickered between news channels, all of them playing the same press conference. The same image of Thaddeus Braxton standing at a microphone, calling out her behavior without ever saying her name. But she knew. She watched the clip of Eunice being asked to leave the plane. She saw herself in the background, arms folded, jaw tight, eyes empty, detached, dismissive. The sound wasn't what got her. It was the silence. The way the cabin just let it happen. The way she let it happen. And for the first time in a long while, Carla didn't feel powerful or professional. She felt small. Familiar, somehow. She turned off the TV, sat in that quiet, and let it sink in. She didn't cry, but her breath caught for a moment, just enough to feel human. Back in Savannah, a car pulled up to a modest brick building just off a quiet street. Eunice stepped out slowly, holding her purse in one hand and a bouquet of fresh hydrangeas in the other. Inside, the hospital was still, the way hospitals always are. Fluorescent lighting, soft voices behind curtains, the faint smell of disinfectant, and something floral trying to mask it. She walked down the hall, past a nurse's station, past a wall lined with faded art prints. Room 208. She paused at the door before knocking lightly with her knuckle. Mildred, she called. The figure in the bed stirred slightly. Gray curls against the white pillow. Thin arms resting on top of the blanket. Eunice, the voice rasped, but it was unmistakable. That same tone that once told jokes during church choir practice, that once talked her through a broken heart at 19. Eunice moved to the chair beside the bed and took her friend's hand gently. I made it, she said softly. Finally. Mildred blinked slowly, but her smile was clear. I saw you. On the TV. Caused a little stir, didn't you? Eunice chuckled. That wasn't the plan. It never is with you, Mildred whispered, her voice fading in and out. But it always matters. There was a long pause. The hum of machines in the background. The hush of nurses' shoes on tile. You haven't changed, Mildred said, her hand tightening just a little. Still the woman who makes people listen without ever raising her voice. Eunice looked down, tears welling. I did what I had to. And this time, I didn't walk away. She reached into her purse, pulled out a folded napkin with notes scribbled in pen. I brought those ginger cookies you like. They're in the car. I'll get them in a bit. Mildred nodded, barely. Eunice leaned closer, their foreheads almost touching. I kept my promise, she whispered. I got on that plane. And this time, nobody dragged me off. Not with their hands. Not with their silence. I stayed in my seat. In the hallway, Maya stood with her phone in hand. She hadn't posted anything since the airport. She'd followed Eunice quietly, filming bits and pieces, not for the internet, but for something else. This moment, she didn't even hit record. She simply stood there, watching through the narrow glass panel in the door. Some stories, she realized, aren't meant to be shared. Some stories are meant to be witnessed and kept. A week after the flight, Eunice stood on her front porch, watering the hibiscus by the steps. The flowers had bloomed full, bold red against the pale green of early spring. She moved slowly, not from age, but from intention. She took her time with everything now, not because she had to, but because she'd earned the right. Her home in Decatur hadn't changed much over the years. The same small wooden fence, the same porch swing that creaked a little too loud when it rained. Inside, the walls were dotted with family photos, holiday cards, and framed school pictures. On the mantel sat a photo of Thaddeus at his college graduation, standing stiffly in his cap and gown, barely smiling. Eunice set the watering can down and headed inside just as the doorbell rang. Maya stood on the porch, holding a wooden box with brass hinges and a navy blue ribbon tied around the middle. I come bearing something, she said, smiling nervously. Eunice welcomed her in, offering sweet tea and a spot by the window. Maya sat, careful with the box in her lap. It's from Sable Air, she said. Thaddeus wanted me to bring it personally. Eunice opened the box slowly. Inside, nestled in dark velvet, was a gold-edged card that read, Eunice Braxton, lifetime priority guest. She stared at it for a long moment. Not out of pride. Just stillness. Then she closed the lid gently. Tell him thank you. But honestly, the most valuable thing anyone's given me is the way you told my story. Maya blinked, caught off guard. I just said what needed saying. Eunice smiled. Sometimes the hardest part is knowing what needs to be said in the first place. Across town, Carla sat in the back of a beige community center room, arms folded but eyes open. She didn't take notes. She didn't ask questions. She just listened. At the front, a woman spoke plainly about unconscious bias, about the small ways people are made to feel lesser, about the systems that don't always scream but still silence. Carla didn't speak, but she stayed until the end. When the session ended, she stood outside alone for a long time. No press. No apology tour. Just quiet. It wasn't redemption, but maybe it was recognition. Back at Sable Air headquarters, Thaddeus stood behind a podium at a staff-wide town hall. We've learned a lot in the past week, he said. Some of it hard. All of it necessary. He took a breath, then continued. Starting today, our flights will no longer separate people by seat class in how we see or serve them. Whether you're in the front, the middle, or the back of the plane, you will be treated with respect. We will measure our success not by profit, but by how many people leave our planes feeling seen. Applause followed, but it wasn't thunderous. It was steady, real. Eunice hadn't come to the ceremony. She declined gently. No interviews, no spotlight. But she sent a letter. It was read aloud by Thaddeus, hand steady as he unfolded the note. I don't need a title, the letter said. I don't need a premium seat. I only ask that the mother boarding with her toddler, the young man traveling alone for the first time, the elder who hasn't flown in decades, be looked at not like they're in the way, but like they matter. If I've helped that happen, then that flight was the most important one of my life. That was all. Later that evening, a plane began boarding for a flight to Denver. Among the passengers was an older man, plain gray jacket, suitcase that had seen better days. He looked unsure at first, double-checking his boarding pass like he might be wrong. The young flight attendant smiled, gestured him in. Welcome aboard, she said warmly. We're honored to have you. He nodded, his shoulders relaxing just a little. As he made his way to his seat, he paused at row 10, window side. The seat was empty. The placard above it read, "Reserved for the one who taught us to see." The sun angled in just right, casting a soft golden light across the fabric. No one sat there that day. And yet somehow, everyone knew exactly who it belonged to. Sometimes, it only takes one quiet act of courage to shift how the world sees. Not just one person, but all of us. Eunice didn't raise her voice, but she made sure she was heard. What about you? Have you ever stood your ground when no one else would? If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next one. We've got more true-to-life tales coming your way.